All right, welcome everybody to another week of the Transfer Portal CFB Gambling Podcast. My name is George. I'm joined, like I am every week, with Mike and Matt. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
What's up?
So we're going to go through all of our picks this week, break down the entire slate. We'll give you our 5 picks that we're tracking every single week, our over, our under, our favorite, our underdog, and of course our lock of the week. And then we'll send you underway with a couple money-making picks. But before we get started, the Transfer Portal CFB Gambling Podcast is presented by No Context CFB and also our friends at Home Field Apparel. Home Field is a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis, and they're committed to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel, with vintage college designs. Now they got a growing collection of over 150 colleges to choose from, including all of your favorite schools, with new brands and new designs getting added every single week. So if you're new to the Home Field Apparel brand, if you're a first-time customer, use the code PORTAL, P-O-R-T-A-L, to get 15% off your first order. That's P-O-R-T-A-L to get 15% off your first order. Now, the link for Home Field is in our bio of this video, and also in our bio is all the ways to follow us, our social media, Twitter, X at tportalcfb, and our website, thetransferportalcfb.com. And of course, we're going to be putting out the graphic with all of these picks and putting right after we put out this podcast. But welcome to this is week 9, and there's a lot going on in the college football world, even though this week isn't necessarily the most entertaining week in terms of schedule. But we got to open up with the biggest story of the entire week, and that's Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys, but I mean, Jim Harbaugh's in a lot of hot water to, paint with a broad brush and set the scene. Basically what is happening is Jim Harbaugh had staffers go to other games and attend other games and record the sidelines and take note of all of their hand signals and all of their play calling, and then stand next to Harbaugh so they knew what plays that the defense and offense were calling. So definitely a big no-no, and there's a huge investigation going on. But I'll turn it over to both of you guys. Matt, you first. What's going on here?
I think the most damning the indication of this was, so throughout all the conference games, like Harbaugh had this big, thick, like stack of papers for every team they were playing. Then we get to the TCU game, and he has one little paper. And what is the worst performance that the Michigan defense had last year? It was TCU dropping like 50 on them. So that's the most damning evidence of it. I'm interested to see what the punishment will be out of this. Like, is it just going to be a fine? Like, Harbaugh was already suspended this year for something else. So is it going to be another suspension, just a fine? Do we see some wins vacated? That could be something that could happen, but I think that's a little unlikely. But I'm interested to see what comes out of it in terms of punishment.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, what about you? I know this is not the team you're about to face soon enough, but how you feel about this?
It's very interesting and polarizing. You got pundits on both sides. Some that think that, hey, everybody does this, and then some that are like, hey, this is like the Houston Astros, Patriots. It crossed the line of what fair game kind of play calling observations are normal based. To agree with Matt, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of penalties come with this. It's pretty darn clear that something happened. Like the staffer bought the tickets in his name on both sides of the sideline with a direct view of the play callers. Like that, you can't even hide it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the punishment.
Yeah, you can't even hide it. He wasn't even trying to hide it. But I think, I'm a Yankees fan, so obviously when you compare it to the Houston Astros, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, send them all to prison. But no, honestly, like there's a certain fair play of like, oh, well, everyone looks at signs. Like, yeah, if they're doing signs directly in your eyesight, like that's why they have all the billboards with all like the different like pictures and all that. And if you could decipher what that means, sure. But obviously the point is that you're not supposed to in real time, and if you could do it in real time, then that's great. But trying to like make a binder and everything is, that's just straight up cheating. And then someone on the college football like Reddit page, I forget who it is, but I wish I could give credit. But he wrote, what a coincidence that Harbaugh's worst season was when there's no fans in the stands in 2020. So I thought that was very funny too. But no, I could definitely see a lot of punishment coming down for this. I personally think it's a big deal. Like it just seems like such an obvious thing. Like, don't, go out of your way to record signs and everything. But the other thing I could see, which I think would be super interesting, is college football starting to take the NFL route where they actually have the microphones with the dot and the helmet, and coaches could now talk to them, which I know there's going to be a lot of people who push back on that, but that just seems like the next logical development where, Harbaugh can't really steal your signs if you're just speaking to your quarterback.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But no, definitely the hottest story of the week. I mean, people are talking about getting them banned for the postseason. I can honestly see that happening too, which is huge because, the upswing when this thing started, they're saying 2021. I don't really believe that after the 2020 comment, but that's when they started getting super hot and beating, the brakes off a team. So we'll see what happens. But other story, we got to do a little bit of week 8 cleanup, and I'm going to turn it right over to you, Mike, just to give you the floor and talk about Penn State, because James Franklin, I don't want to say hot seat because it's ridiculous to say hot seat, but Penn State's in limbo. They're very clearly better than the rest of the Big Ten and very clearly not at the level they need to be at for Ohio State and Michigan. You're still playing Michigan, so I shouldn't say that. But what are you feeling? Give me your take. Give me you got the floor for how you're feeling Penn State.
Deflated. Like they lost their identity during that game. Like I went back through, I rewatched it to punish myself.
True sicko mode.
Right. I went through the stats. Like the running game was working, and they just abandoned it. It was very, very clear that Ohio State had different athletes than they played all year. So like they weren't getting those short out routes, the gimme routes they were getting from everybody else. Ohio State was still playing the 3 safety look. So no big plays over top. But what was successful was running to the right side, and they stopped doing it for some unknown reason. And it was ugly offensively. The defense played fantastic. There were a couple plays from changing the game, like that the touchdown that was called back. Yeah, yes, it was holding. But it was still obviously a huge play in that game. Their season's not over. I heard a good analogy of like Penn State's in a really, really nice nightclub. Like it's a red velvet, and there's a beautiful cold drinks, like all this nice food, but there's a VIP room that Ohio State is in, Alabama is in, Georgia is in, and Penn State's just not in that room yet. Like this will be their, if they do what we expect them to do and lose to Michigan and win out the rest, this is like 5-10 wins regular seasons in a 7-year span. Or like, that's fantastic. Everybody, there's a lot of people that would give their right hand to be able to do that. So like you said, it's not, James Franklin is not on any sort of hot seat. He's a 10-year deal and everything like that. And Penn State should be a beacon of excellence, but they're not elite, to quote him from a few years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, if Penn State's waiting at the Velvet Rope to get in, I mean, Texas, I'm still drinking watered down drinks at the bar. So I mean, I trust me, I feel you, but no, I feel the same way after we dropped one to Oklahoma. But Matt, I know you had Penn State plus 4.5 last week. What are your takeaways from that game?
It never really felt like it was there. It felt like Ohio State had a different edge the whole game to me, and I never felt comfortable about my bet. I was watching the game, and like the Ohio State's defense was playing really well, taking away everything Penn State wanted to do besides running the ball a little bit. But they went away from that, and then the passing game just got completely shut down.
Yeah, and then I mean, I talked about this on the recap podcast with Adam the other day that came out, but it seemed like both quarterbacks were super uncomfortable. Both defenses were playing great, and both quarterbacks were really uncomfortable, and especially in the first half. And then Drew Allar just never really seemed to find it. He was missing throws. Kyle McCord seemed to find it, for the most part. But that's also like Cade Stover making catches in traffic, and then Marvin Harrison just being Marvin Harrison Jr., the best receiver in the nation. But yeah, I think we can all agree though we kind of got beat to death by Gus Johnson with the Maserati Marv. So I'm gonna have a little bit of PTSD with that if I hear that again. Hopefully, they're not on Fox, at least to cool us off for another week. But no, a little bit more week 8 recap. Our personal bad beats. We have a whole bunch. So I know, Mike, you and I shared a few of these, but we'll go through, where each of us have some of these bad beats, but I'm going to start with one. I'm going to take the LSU and the Army over 59.5. So this is the opposite of a bad beat. I actually took this I think I got it at 60 after you told me to bet it, Mike, but I was watching this game on like a second or third TV, and I was like, all right, I don't know if I have a chance at this. Army just cannot move the ball and cannot score. And LSU did exactly what we said. They're trying to show off. They were 5-2 going into this game. They're trying to stay relevant and stay in the playoff hunt. And they just exploded and kept scoring and kept running up the score. And I think they had like 55 points or something in late in the fourth quarter, and they got the ball back and they ran a 67-yard touchdown run. So they covered by themselves the over, which, I not a fan of Brian Kelly, but I got to give him props for allowing me to hit that over. That was a very, very good beat there. But what do you got? I'll turn it over to you, Mike. Give me some of your bad beats of the week.
Yeah, that was a good, like you said, that was a good beat for me last week as well. The bad beats that I still don't understand that Iowa fair catch call. It blows. It is very evident the dude's trying to clear out the area. That was a very, very bad beat, because I went from like screaming up and down like, yes, got it. There's no way that Minnesota's going to score. I got my parlay, and then bang, that called it right back. And I knew that Iowa's offense was not traveling 50 yards down the field.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, and you knew Iowa wasn't traveling 50 yards down the field, but also I forgot that was also your parlay, that was the last leg of it, which is impossible. And it was also, I couldn't tell if it would be funnier for them to actually score and just trigger everyone that they're still, like a one-loss team and they're potentially going to win the Big Ten West, and they literally cannot score on offense. But I don't know. Both results were very funny, but this one lost me money too. So, but what about you, Matt? Give me some bad beat or a good beat of the week, if you got any.
I didn't really have all of mine are pretty much like either done by the third quarter or they won by the third quarter. Like the closest one was Penn State 4.5, but the only other pick I had that lost, I won my upset and my parlay this week, was North Carolina minus 23.5, and that was just never close. So
that's fair, yeah. And then the other one I'll give a shout out to is the Clemson -3. Clemson, I think, was on the 2-yard line, like first and goal, and they were down 3 points. So if they would have scored, they would have gotten the -3, or they would have been -4. So they would have covered. And they just awful play calling. Like two draws, a quarterback, and roll out to the opposite side, throw, and then just like a naked RPO to the weak side or something. Like, it was, I have no idea what they're trying to do. I don't know what Clemson's identity is either. So, and then of course they lost in overtime because they kicked a field goal. So just awful loss with Clemson there too. Not necessarily a bad beat, but just seeing them on the 2-yard line, and I was like, all right, this is awesome. This is going to hit. But yeah, no, that was that was the last leg of my 595 parlay. I just double checked, but yeah, so that was brutal. Oh man, but yeah, so ranked games this week. There's only 2 actual full ranked games this week for week 9. The first being number 20 Duke at number 18 Louisville. So I'll turn it over to you, Matt, first. But how do we feel about Duke traveling down to Louisville, Kentucky?
these are two teams that are they barely feel like ranked teams. This doesn't feel like a ranked game because Duke with Riley Leonard's injury, they just aren't the same team they were when he was fully healthy. And then Louisville, they were undefeated going into last week, but it's a kind of, how are they undefeated? They've won 6 games, but it doesn't feel like it. And then they lose to Pitt. So that should get your ranked title taken away right away, losing to Pitt by 17. Mm-hmm. So, but they're getting a little strength from their victory over Notre Dame. So I understand why they're still ranked, but it feels like an ugly game here. It's probably going to be low scoring. The Duke defense is good. The Louisville defense has been playing well. So it feels like it's going to be an ugly, low scoring game, but not one I'll be desperate to tune into.
Yeah, and I almost feel like I somehow am just forgetting that they beat Notre Dame too. I don't know if it's Louisville doesn't have stars. They're just not a team that moves the needle for me. So when I see them as they're 18 in the country and I'm like, oh, you lost to Pitt, I'm like, why and without Riley Leonard, this game doesn't really have like a marquee matchup. But other big game of the week. This is the actual biggest game of the week. I assume game day is going to be here, but Oregon number 8 visiting Utah. So Oregon at number 13 Utah. Mike, what do you feel about the Ducks traveling over to face the Utes?
Yeah, anytime you go into Utah, it's a tough environment. I love the landscape. I love the crowd all black. It's awesome. Their defense is for real, and their offense showed some life last week against USC. But I think that this you'll see later on. I think Oregon's going to overmatch them a bit. This is a game where they're really going to miss Cam Rising and a star player like Dalton Kincaid. But yeah, this is for me, for my money, this is the best ranked matchup for the week between the two.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think again, yeah, I have some takes on this that we'll share later on, but I do think this is a really good matchup. It's kind of like a strength on strength with Utah's defense and Oregon's offense. So we'll see. And it's a 3:30 game. I just checked. It's not a night game, but we'll still get that like really cool like sunset with the mountains in the background. It's just an awesome game to actually see on television. But and then what other games? Since there's only 2 ranked games, what other games you got your eye on? Mike, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple rivalry games both in the SEC. I'll take the first one, Tennessee at Kentucky. Tennessee, I thought played well last week against Alabama, though the score doesn't really show it. That team can run the ball, and their defense isn't as bad as what the score ended up being. I think they gave up 32 or 34 points or something like that. And then Kentucky's kind of reeling. They started off a real quiet. I believe it was 4-0 before Mizzou kind of knocked their teeth in. But it's still a tough place to play. I believe the spread was 3 or 4. When I was looking at
3.5, yeah.
3.5. It was one that I wasn't comfortable touching on either side. I think Tennessee could blow the doors off of them, but I could also see Kentucky winning. But it's just because of the hate between the two schools. But that's definitely one that I'll be tuning in for.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is going to be a good game, and I had my upset. I had a sprinkle on Tennessee, even though it was like a 10-point spread against Alabama, I think. But it was like the definition of the you had us in the first half. Not going to lie, like Tennessee looked really good in the first half. I felt pretty good about it, and then just Tennessee did Tennessee things. And Alabama just kind of started to slowly steamroll them as it went on, and it just became not even a close game, which is kind of insane to say. But no, definitely going to be a good game with like a little bit of bad blood there. But what do you got your eye on this week, Matt? That's not a ranked versus ranked, but still a good game.
An interesting one to me is one in the Pac-12 because the spread looks like a trap game because it's Oregon State at Arizona and the spread's only 3.5 in this one, which if you think that the 11th team in the country against Arizona, you're thinking that's going to be a bigger spread. But Arizona the last 3 weeks, I think, has played like Washington State. They beat the doors off of Washington State's reeling right now, but they went double OT with USC, and then they only lost to Washington by a touchdown. So they've been playing good teams tough. So I'm interested to see what it's kind of like a litmus test for Oregon State almost. Like, are they a legit one-loss team that can maybe challenge one of Washington or Oregon in the championship game, or are they just kind of holding on for dear life until the end of the season when they play the good teams? So I'm interested to see that litmus test there.
Yeah, that was a spread that I 100% agree with you. That was a trap spread because I saw that and I was like, "There's something I don't know." I literally looked up if DJ Uiagalelei was hurt. I was like, "There's got to be something I'm not seeing here." But I ended up just staying away from that. But I do think that's a trap spread. And then some of the games I got my eye on: Georgia, Florida, the Florida Georgia line game, always definitely a good game. I know the spread's 14.5 for Georgia, but they're visiting Florida, so they're in Gainesville. Definitely going to be a pretty good game. I just think Georgia's going to pull away even without Brock Bowers. I just think they're going to slowly out-talent Florida. I don't see Graham Mertz playing super, super well. And then the other game I have my eye on that I love, also a 14.5-point spread, is Ohio State traveling to Madison to play Wisconsin. I'm actually going to go to that game, so I'm super pumped for that game. But I'll be rooting for Ohio State, and I think Ohio State has a pretty good chance of covering that, especially, coming off of playing Penn State. Definitely a good win, but Wisconsin is definitely a good defense, but I don't think they're the same defense as Penn State. And I definitely do not think they're even close to the same offense as Penn State. And Penn State's offense was pretty stifled by Ohio State's defense. So I think Ohio State has a good chance to kind of smother them and just eventually lean on Marvin Harrison Jr. to make a couple of big plays down the stretch. But yeah, so that's a week 8 recap. So going over our picks last week. I was 3-2. I won my lock, so congrats to me, my first lock of the season. 1-0 my last one. Gotta love it. Matt, also you won your lock, also 3-2 on the week, so good job. And Mike 3-2 on the week as well, but lost your lock, which is unfortunate. But in first place for our actual standings, I'm in third place, but I have the same exact record as Matt, 18-21-1. But Matt's 7-1 in his locks, and I'm 1-6-1. So definitely in third place with that pretty awful tiebreaker. And then Mike, our first 500 of the season, well, maybe since like week 2, but Mike is 20-20 overall, 5-3 on locks. So definitely pretty comfortable in first place right now until hopefully this week, but we'll see. But yeah, so we'll get into our picks this week. Before we get to our picks, I do want to shout out Mike's shirt. I love the shirt. They are not a good football team, Mike's signature. Definitely love it, but we'll see. I have a feeling he's going to feel that way about one or two of the teams that we're talking about here. But again, we're going to go over all of our picks, our over, our underdog, favorite, and then lock of the week. And then we're going to give you a true upset, so that's plus 130 or more, and then a parlay or teaser, a couple, at least 3 legs, and then send you on your way with a couple additional picks. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike. Who you got for your over for the week for week 9?
All right. For my over, I got Marshall at Coastal Carolina. A bit of an obscure pick, I understand. But Coastal Carolina is pumping out like 25-30 pretty much every single game. And Marshall, when they played FBS opponents, they've scored 40, they've scored 35. The spread on this game is actually pretty close. I believe it was 3. I was surprised to see the total in the 40s. I would have expected 50 range. So this one seemed like a no-brainer to me. I hope it's not something I'm going to be regretting. This is going to be a 20-3 game or something like that. But I don't think it's a trap.
Yeah, the only thing that scared me, I know because Grace McCall got hurt again, I think, and I'm not sure if that was last week or the week before, but
it was the week before, and they still put up 27. So
and like I don't think him being gone really negates Coastal's offense that much, and Coastal's defense is not. Whenever I think of their defense, I think of like the 2 or 3 years ago, the mullet days when everyone had like the insane mullets and their defense was really good and like stifling teams. They're not that defense anymore. I could see Marshall putting up 20. So I actually like this pick a lot. I loved it when I saw you put it on the board. But yeah, good pick. So Marshall at Coastal over 45. My over for the week is a game that we mentioned, a game of the week, Oregon at Utah over 48. I know that this seems like it's an obscure pick because Oregon's defense is pretty good. Utah's defense is great. I think this is, kind of a little bit of an Oregon revenge game of them trying to prove that they're good. I think they're going to put up points early, and Utah can score with teams when they have to. They proved that obviously against USC, and they proved that against a couple of their last opponents. But I don't think Oregon gets pushed around the same way that Utah pushes around teams, and I could easily see this game being like, a 28-24 game or something like that. So, or I can even see Oregon getting into the 30s, but I can't see them really getting shut out or settling for field goals too often. So I got Oregon at Utah over 48. Matt, what do you got for your pick, and what do you feel about ours?
I like your guys'. If Utah's forced to throw the ball, they are a team that can score. They would just prefer to run it down your throat and close out a game. But if they have to throw, they can. And then I like the Marshall one. I love an obscure pick. I have an obscure kind of game too. I got Tulane at Rice over 54.5. I had Tulane last week as my over, and they hit. And I'm going back to them. So Tulane, it's kind of the same argument for them. They're good. They're an efficient offense. They move the ball down the field. They complete a lot of passes and run the ball. They don't take a ton of time off the clock. They're like middle of the pack in terms of pace. But then Rice has kind of been putting up a lot of points this year, and they're doing it in a way that combats what's bad about Tulane's defense. Tulane is like not letting anyone run the ball at them at all. They're allowing less than 70 yards, I think, on the ground. but they're allowing about 270 through the air, and Rice is throwing for over 320 a game. JT Daniels is actually kind of having a good season on his 9th or 10th college now, something like that. But their Rice's last 5 games, they put up 42, 31, 24, 29, and 59. So like they're putting up points so that they'll be able to kind of go back and forth a little bit. I do still think Tulane wins pretty handedly, but I think Rice will put up enough points to get over 54.
Yeah, I love the pick. I mean, Rice does have like a sneaky good offense, and JT Daniels, PhD, the dude's been basically in med school, like at all these different colleges. But no, I do love that pick. I like all three of ours. Moving on to our under of the week, I'll start with mine first. I did love. I know this podcast is not going to come out in time. I did love Syracuse and shoot, I'm losing who Syracuse is playing this week.
Virginia Tech.
Oh yeah, I did love Syracuse, Virginia Tech. I think it was at 48. I was going to take that, but I want to, be true to when this podcast is coming out and be able to put out the graphic. So do love that pick if this comes out in time. But I'm going to take this week for my under Oklahoma at Kansas under 65.5. I think Kansas's offense is not really as good as they were labeled in the beginning of the season. And I think they're going to suffer a little bit when they play Oklahoma's defense. I don't think Oklahoma's defense is fantastic, but I think they're better than what they've played. Their last couple is against UCF and Oklahoma State, and then when they played Texas, they only put up 7 points. So I think this is a little bit of a Oklahoma trying to prove it and common opponent and try to beat Kansas by like smothering them and holding them down. And I think Oklahoma's offense is great, but I don't think they're going to be putting up 50 this game. I think it's going to be, a 35-17 type game, and this will be very, very under. So I love this pick, but Oklahoma at Kansas under 65.5. Matt, what do you got? And what do you think about Oklahoma, Kansas?
I like that pick. I think Kansas's offense is taking a bit of a step back from last year. I went with an equally exciting game, Michigan State at Minnesota. So neither of these teams has cleared more than 20 points more than 3 times all season. Michigan State's averaging like 11 points in their last 5 games. I was shocked to see this game over 40. I thought this was going to be like in the mid 30s. There's a few games in the 30s this week as well, but I thought this was going to be another one in the 30s. I just can't really see a way this gets into the 40s. It's going to be a cold game too. I think it's going to be under 40 degrees. So it's getting into real cold Big Ten West football weather, and Minnesota is going to excel at being a Big Ten West football team and not scoring very many points. So I think this stays well under the 40s.
Yeah, this is a 3:30 game in Minnesota. This is going to be a little bit of if this was like, if we had red zone, this would be the game that just never showed up on red zone. But no, I do love this pick. This was an ugly game. I think the game opened at the line was Minnesota minus like 7.5, and it instantly money started pouring in on Michigan State because I'm pretty sure people just think that nobody's scoring any touchdowns. But Mike, what do you think about those, and what do you got for your under for the week?
I got a similar pick to Matt, so I like Matt's. It's not a game I'm going to watch unless I put money on it. But the Oklahoma and Kansas one, the only concern I would have about Kansas putting up points is Oklahoma State's rush defense. Not Oklahoma State, Oklahoma's rush defense, as well as the rush offense. So they're going to be throwing the ball a lot because the rush offense isn't great, and Kansas's pass defense is pretty good. So I could see a 35 being the winning score. I'm just hoping that's 25, 26 based on my pick later for your under. But my game might even take the cake for most boring. It's Purdue at Nebraska under 40. Both of these teams are not good football teams. They are not a good football team. Nebraska has scored 7, 17, and 20 in their first 3 Big Ten games. Purdue scored 7 against Ohio State. I think it was like 17. It doesn't matter. They had one good scoring game, and it was against Illinois. But this game, it has all the makings of the Minnesota-Iowa game that we saw this past weekend. both defenses aren't too bad. They're defensive-minded coaches. Yeah, this isn't one I would watch for pleasure. I would watch it if you have a vetted gambling interest in it.
Yeah, this is like a true sicko game, and I can't believe the Minnesota Iowa game. Jesus God, that was so ugly. It was a 12-10. It ended up.
Yeah.
What was the? I think Auburn Mississippi State was. I think that was the game that was 7-3, which was kind of astonishing. But yeah, no, a bunch of real sicko games going on. But yeah, I can't believe you guys both took 40s. I think what I have last week, I'll check real quick because my under last week. Oh yeah, my under last week was Air Force and Navy at 34.5. And as soon as that kicked off, I was like, I'm so confident in this. I thought Navy was going to cover too. I literally bet Navy. I had Navy as a pick of +10. And the line moved up to 11.5, and I got it at 11.5, and they covered because it was 11. So Vegas undefeated, but my goodness, that game was real ugly and didn't really have to sweat out my under 34.5. But let's move on to our favorites. I'm going to jump right back to you, Mike. But who you guys are favorite for the week giving points?
The game we already talked about, Oregon -6.5 at Utah. I think Utah is probably feeling, really good. After their win over USC, a lot of emotion, everything coming back home, which is always good for them. And their defense is it's for real. But Oregon's defense is good too, man. Like their defense is good and their offense is a lot better than what a lot of people give credit for. So they're not going to be able to. The USC's downfall last week was they couldn't get Utah's offense off of the field. It wasn't necessarily that USC wasn't scoring. Now, Oregon's offense might not be USC's, but they're certainly good enough to win this game by a touchdown.
Yeah,
and they need to impress. Like they need style points on their resume.
That's my biggest takeaway is they need style points on their resume. It was a super painful loss against Washington the other week, and that was like Washington driving down last second and scoring. I think they still have a bitter taste in their mouth. They're going to do what we talked about with LSU. They're going to try to put up points. It's not going to be LSU putting up 60 because Utah's not going to allow that. But I think they're going to go out of their way to try to put up points. And like Matt said before, I mean, Utah, if they have to throw the ball, they can. So I think an early score from Oregon forces this game to start to move in the right direction. I mean, I obviously have the over in this game, so that's what I think. But I do really, truly believe that Oregon covers this by a touchdown. But Matt, what do you got? How do you think about that pick? And then what do you got for your favorite given points this week?
I like that pick, and I like a lot of the teams that are one loss now. They all have good chances, just because it doesn't feel. There are still, I think, 6 or 7 undefeated teams left up top, but there's arguments to be made that a really good one-loss team could beat out some of those 12-0 teams in for the CFP spot. Like if Florida State goes undefeated, there's an argument that Oregon, a one-loss Oregon that only lost to Washington, should be in that spot instead of them. So I do agree all those teams have to put up big points. I went with South Alabama -10.5 or -10. It's bounced back and forth a little bit over Louisiana. I like the over in this one as well. I'll probably be my picks, but Louisiana's defense has been really, really bad, and South Alabama has a really efficient offense. And the biggest issue with Louisiana's defense has been running the ball. And LaDamian Webb has been pounding the rock this year. He has over 12 touchdowns on the year, I think. He's a really good back out of South Alabama. He was all Sun Belt last year for his team. And South Alabama seems like it's kind of finding its groove. They were rough to start here. They had a big upset loss, and then they lost to JMU, but JMU is one of the best teams in the country, so that's an okay loss. But beat Oklahoma State up pretty bad, beat UL Monroe by 50, then beat Southern Miss by 50 last week. So they're in their groove right now. Their team is playing well. Louisiana isn't playing poorly. They lost to Minnesota, which is never great. Well, they allowed Minnesota to score 35, which should tell you how bad their defense is. But they've been keeping teams close, which is why I think the spread is as close as it is. But I think South Alabama should be like a 2-touchdown favorite over them. So I like them to win by 2 touchdowns here.
I absolutely love this pick. I was debating making this my lock or taking this when I saw you had it. I think South Alabama's offense is fantastic. So I just think if their defense plays well at all, they're just going to blow this game out of the water. But no, I think that pick's great. I'll definitely be tailing that. My favorite of the week, I was debating making this my lock. I was back and forth on it, but I love UCLA minus 17 versus Colorado. I think this is the wheels have almost fully fallen off for Colorado. Last week's loss against Stanford was just absolutely brutal. I think they were up 21 or 28 at half, and then Stanford just storming all the way back. Just, Colorado's just looking sloppy. They're not really doing what they're supposed to do, and now they're getting into a stretch of their season where they're about to play some really good football teams. So I truthfully don't know if I could see them winning a game the rest of the year, but we'll see how they can bounce back in terms of a really embarrassing loss and try to at least save face and try to make games close. But I think both of these teams are on opposite trajectories, and UCLA is on the way up in terms of their trajectory, and Colorado's a little bit on the way down. So I do like UCLA minus 17 to cover, especially at home against Colorado. But all right, so those are our favorites. Let's move over to our underdogs. So teams getting points this week that we like. I will start with mine. Mine's a little bit of an odd pick, but I have Vanderbilt plus 24.5 at Ole Miss. I just simply think this is too many points. I know Vanderbilt's not really a good football team, but they tend to hang in a little bit, especially against their SEC opponents. I'm basing this almost purely on the recency of like all of the games that they played, and Vanderbilt hasn't lost by 24.5 all season, or I think they might have maybe actually no, Vanderbilt hasn't lost by 24.5 all season. Ole Miss has only beat two teams, one by 25, and then an FCS school by like 60 points or something first game of the season. So I'm not really going to count that. But I mean, Ole Miss can't really blow out teams, and Vanderbilt losing. I think they lost by 17 last week to Georgia, and I don't think Ole Miss is really in the same plane as Georgia, and they tend to keep games within two touchdowns or 20 points depending on how good the team is that they're playing. So I don't see Ole Miss running away with this. I definitely see Ole Miss winning fairly handedly, but I could see Vanderbilt putting up 10, 17 points, and then just keeping this around the 20-point spread and being able to cover here. But Mike, I'll move over to you. How do you feel about Vandy, and then what do you got for your underdog of the week?
I don't feel good about Vandy winning, but I don't feel good about Ole Miss. They're not a complete football team. Their offense is always going to show out, but with some plays, but not as consistent as they were per se last year. I think they're kind of a pretender this year in the SEC West. Like a similar in note to like a Maryland in the Big Ten East. People kind of that comparison. I have Kansas at plus 10 versus Oklahoma. So I, like you, saw that line and I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I started looking into it and started understanding like why the Sharks kind of love it. So obviously it's at Lawrence. Kansas is a different football team at home. I saw that Jalen Daniels isn't projected to be the starter from what Lance Leopold is saying to the media. So that even confused me a little more. And then I dug into their stats the last 2 years against the spread. So like Lance Leopold following a loss, which they lost last week, is perfect against the spread. At home, they are damn near perfect against the spread. And he's a good football coach. He was a very good football coach at Buffalo. He made them incredibly relevant in the MAC. And he's done a damn good job in his first few years at Kansas. And I think he's also kind of coaching for he's 60, I think. And so he's getting towards the end of his like prime, I guess you would say, from a coaching standpoint. So he's probably coaching for a retirement job. So whether that's Michigan State, whether that's somewhere else that's someone's on the hot seat where they can pay him a significant amount of money, or it's an increase at Kansas. He keeps this game close. That's a nice little spot on his resume. Hey, I can hang with the big boys. So I don't think that they're going to win. I wouldn't sprinkle anything on the money line this week. But I think they're going to keep it close late, and it's hard to pull away in Lawrence.
Yeah, no, I like this pick mostly because I didn't understand it either.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Also, it wouldn't be a bad retirement job in Kansas after Texas, Oklahoma leave. Like, let's be real. But if he can recruit the way he has been a little bit and kind of build them up. But no, I mean, I brought this up with you before we even started recording. I was like, what am I missing here? I don't fully understand this, and I looked into it a little bit, and yeah, I don't. Kansas plus 10. I think I looked into the line. I think it opened at 7.5, and people just all like were jumping on this on Oklahoma side. That's the only thing that scared me a lot. That this moved up to 10, and now all the Sharks are jumping all over plus 10. So I'm not really positive where the line should be. I think it might be closer to a 7.5, but yeah, no, this game just honestly scared me. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is a bounce back game for Oklahoma after the UCF, super close game that they had last week and a little bit of a scare. But we'll see. Again, I think this kind of lines up with the way I see this game a little bit, because I see this being under, and I think it's going to be a little bit of a hard game going to Lawrence. But yeah, no, hopefully we're both on the same trajectory. This is a close, 20 game or something like that. But what do you got, Matt, for your underdog of the week getting points?
I took Old Dominion plus 20 against JMU. I never like betting against JMU because I think they're a really good team. But Old Dominion has not lost a game by 20 points all year, and JMU's covered a 20-point spread twice. Once was against Bucknell, which is an FCS team, and then barely they covered it against Georgia Southern 2 weeks ago. So they're not a team that blows people out. They're once they get the lead, they kind of shut you down and then run the ball a good bit. And then the other thing that makes me excited about this is Jordan McLeod, JMU's quarterback, got hurt last week. He did come back in, but he clearly was a little hindered in his performance. That's kind of why they were in a bit of a close game with Marshall. It was like a gutty kind of score one drive to close out the lead, and then they just moved the ball a little bit down the field. The one thing that worries me about this is Old Dominion likes to run the ball a good bit. And when I saw this stat, I had to look it up because I didn't believe it. JMU is allowing 36 rushing yards per game this year, which is half of what the next best team is. Next best team allows 69 a game. So that's a little worrying.
That's absurd.
So the Old Dominion does still pass. It's that they're not like a triple option team where they're running more than they're throwing. They still do throw for 220, 230 a game. But if they get to a point where they do have to run the ball, that could be an issue. But I think this, especially with Jordan McLeod being a little hindered, I think this is kind of a game where JMU's going to get a lead and then try to maintain it rather than blow them out the water. So that's what I'm betting on this game to be. And I'm hoping the Old Dominion just doesn't run the ball a single time.
Yeah, no, I can't. That's an absurd set. 36 yards per game is bananas. But no, I do like that pick. I that wasn't fully on my radar, so I'll have to admit. So I think that's probably for the best that JMU is just going to be able to go up 10 points and just honestly lean on them and just make that the entire game. But no, I do like all those picks. Let's move on to our locks of the week. So our favorite pick for any of the above categories for the whole week. I'll go right to you, Mike, and see what your lock of the week is.
First, I want to comment on Matt's Old Dominion pick. So that's also kind of a rivalry game for those two teams. This must be rivalry week or something like that because all the stuff we talked about before. Bucknell is actually a Patriot League team that's only an hour away from my house, and the definition of not a good football team. So they might have had negative 50 rushing yards against JMU to help that set. But I like that pick. I think they're not gonna try to run away from that. My offset pick is Texas minus 18 versus BYU. There's some recency bias in here after seeing a not a very good TCU team blow the doors off of BYU. But BYU is not your older brother's BYU. I think Texas is also trying to build their resume as well. They've handled pretty much everybody easily outside of Houston. Of course, outside of the Red River rivalry. I think this is even with the quarterback injury, this should be an easy 18.
Yeah, this is so that's your lock of the week. But let's the thing that scares me a little bit is I do love Malik Murphy, Texas. That's their backup quarterback coming in. He fantastic prospect, absolute monster when you see him on the field, and he's got a super good arm. I just think this is all about how Sark is able to change the offense to Malik Murphy's strengths and not just have him run Quinn Ewers' offense. Like, there's a reason he didn't transfer. This is the moment he's been waiting for. He's got all the talent in the world. Like, let's see if he can actually, put up points against BYU. This is kind of the time to do it. This is like a little bit of a softer part of their schedule. It did scare me a lot. I know Quinn Ewers went out and all that, but their defense just slowly leaking and giving up points against Houston after, it seemed like they were up 21 and just kind of cruising. And that was kind of a scare at the end. And I know people, talk about it was definitely a first down, whatever. Fully agree with that. I think there's definitely some gripes there, but it was just an ugly game for Texas, and sometimes you got to skate by and win one. But this is like the definition of a bounce back game to like prove that you're worthy, prove that you're supposed to be there, and you need to beat up on Keaton Slovis and BYU. But I do like that pick. It did scare me a lot. With I love how Malik Murphy came out the gate, but I think with an entire week to prepare, Stark better have him moving and grooving. But I'll move over to you, Matt. What do you think about that? And then what do you got for your lock of the week?
I like that pick. It's another one of the resume builders. We talked about the one loss team, so it's a good position for them. I went with Texas State and Troy under 53. Troy has been a monster for unders this week. I think they've had one game go over 53 all year. They've been a really low scoring team. Last week they won, or I think it was 2 weeks ago. They were on a bye last week, but they played Army. It was 19-0. Like it's kind of a classic smash mouth team. Play really good defense, run the ball. Texas State has been back and forth. They've had a few games where they've looked like they were like a world-breaking offense. Kinney came over from, I can't remember the college. He came over from FCS. I can't think of the college. But their offense was like great. They were averaging like 62 points a game in the FCS last year, the team he was coaching. So he runs like a severe air raid, get to the line, snap the ball, very hurry up. So they do score a lot of points at times, but when they've played good defenses, they have struggled, and they only put up 21 last week, and 30 the week before. So they are in a bit of a downturn from the couple weeks before where they put up like 77 and 50 against Jacksonville State and Southern Miss. So the offense is coming down a little bit, and then Troy's defense is very, very good. They're probably the best defense in the Sun Belt. So I don't think this game gets over 53. I think Troy's going to get a lead early, get a pick or two, and then just kind of milk the clock out. So I like under 53 here as my lock.
I love this pick. I think Troy's defense is fantastic. So I can honestly see, Texas State being stifled and, having 10 points or so. Texas State's kind of wild because, like you said, like they kind of a roller coaster, like they'll put up like 40, 50 points and then they'll kind of be shut down a little bit. But no, I think I love Texas. I love Troy's defense more than I like Texas State's offense. And I think if Troy gets up, they just kind of lean on them and milk the clock and knock this game out of the water. But no, I like both of your picks. I'll do my lock of the week. I have SMU minus 20.5 versus Tulsa. I love getting, the ability just to win by 3 touchdowns and cover here. I don't think Tulsa's that good of a football team, and they've kind of been on a skid lately. And I think SMU is who I thought SMU was at the beginning of the season. Preston Stone, their offense is like really clicking, and they're starting to put up a lot of points. They put up 55 last week against Temple and shut them out. So their defense is also, helping them out a little bit. And their defense has given up, 16 points, 10 points, and 0 points in the last 3 weeks consecutively. So their defense is starting to really find their stride, and Tulsa's offense is not doing so well. They put up 10 points against Rice last week and 17 points against FAU, and I think SMU is just a better football team than both of them. So I see SMU, being up by 21.5 and then just, hopefully not playing with their food and just putting this away and going up 28 points and running away with it. But I think SMU is a little bit in showboat mode, and they're trying to get back to, who we all thought SMU would be, being like a, 60, 70 point a week team, that they were kind of projected to be going into the season. They were supposed to be one of the best offenses, in the country. So love SMU here. SMU minus 20.5 versus Tulsa in Dallas is my lock. So let's get over to some of our money making picks. So these are all going to be plus money, and we'll talk about the plus money and have them on the graphic as we put these out. So we're going to give an upset and then a parlay or a teaser of the week, and we'll give you the plus money for each of them. So we'll start with our upsets. So this is true upsets. It's plus 130 and up, which is normally about at least a 2.5 point spread. But my upset, I'll start with mine. I have Kentucky plus 150 versus Tennessee. This is maybe a little bit of a salty pick because Tennessee was my upset pick last week, and then they completely fell apart and didn't necessarily do what they were supposed to. But I think we talked about this a little bit before. It's a little bit of a rivalry game. I think the spread is about 3.5 for Tennessee. So it's definitely a relatively close game, but I think Kentucky hasn't been playing fantastic, and if they're going to get up for any game, they're going to get up against Tennessee. And I think Tennessee might be a little bit battered and bruised against, after playing Alabama last week and, feeling pretty good at halftime and then seeing Alabama smoke cigars, in the locker room right after the game. So I think Kentucky has a pretty good chance to pull this upset. I don't necessarily love the line at 3.5 because I think if Tennessee wins, they might win by a touchdown. But I think it's decent value for a rivalry type game here for plus 150 Kentucky at home against Tennessee. So Mike, what do you think about that? And then what do you got for your upset of the week?
I like the value. I mean, plus 150 for a game that I wouldn't be surprised if they won. Like I said before, I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee blew them out, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kentucky won. So it's one of those I'm not touching. But if I was going to, it'd be sprinkle on the money. My pick, it's another. You bring it up every single week. I do the backyard brawl, some sort of backyard brawl team. West Virginia plus 230 at UCF. I was very surprised to see the line be 7.5. When I saw it. I understand it's at UCF. I understand West Virginia is a different team from when they play at home. But they were beating Oklahoma State till late in the fourth quarter last week, and lost that. They lost the heartbreaker to Houston the week prior to that. But other than that, they've upset a few teams. UCF's lost 4 in a row, including getting blown out a couple times by who was it? Kansas and Kansas State. They got blown out both times. They did have that good game last week against Oklahoma, so I think people are looking at that and saying, "Hey, this isn't a bad UCF team." But I'm shocked to see the value at plus 230.
Yeah, I hated the spread. I actually like UCF a lot. I just hated the spread at 7.5 points. I loved UCF, excuse me, last week against Oklahoma. I talked about it a lot, but John Reese Plumlee coming back, I think their offense is way more explosive when he's on the field. So that's kind of my only fear is like they're starting to find their groove a little bit, and West Virginia is not as good as Oklahoma is, but Oklahoma also just kind of let that slip a little bit, and I think they got surprised. So I do think it's really good value for a game that should be within a touchdown spread. It should be around 6.5, maybe 6, but yeah, 7.5, I wouldn't really touch it, but West Virginia could, mess around and go into UCF and just pull out an upset. But Matt, what do you think about those two? And then what do you got for your true upset of the week?
I really like the value on the plus 230. I think that should probably be closer to like a plus 195, plus 185. So I think as far as value pick, that's good. I went with a little bit of a cheat. It is a 3.5 point spread, but for some reason it's only plus 135 on the money line. I'm not sure what the deal with that is, but it's a lower money line than it should be. It's Eastern Michigan over Western Michigan. And I don't understand why Eastern Michigan are dogs here. They're at home. They have pretty similar strength schedules in terms of playing in conference and their non-conference opponents. And they have a much better record. The only thing I can think is the matchup of these teams is a bit weird. But neither of them can move the ball very well. Both of them would rather run the ball than throw the ball. And Eastern Michigan's run defense has been really bad. But I still think overall, if you look at the roster top to bottom, they are a better team in the MAC. They're a team most people thought would be not contending for a top spot in the MAC, but they would be more in the mix than Western Michigan would be. Western Michigan, I think, when we did the season preview pod, I think both me and Liam had them second to last to Kent State. So they're a team that no one really expected to compete in the MAC, where Eastern Michigan everyone thought they'd be a competitive team. So I don't understand why they are the underdog here. So I like the value at plus 135.
Yeah, I think this is like, a glorified pickup game. So I think the value at 135 is pretty good. The only thing that scares me with this is I think it opened at -1.5 Western Michigan like 2 days ago, and it's already moved up to 3.5. So I just only seeing that I was like, there's people probably know something I don't. It's like the Vegas is smarter than me mentality, but for an in-state rivalry, I think this is a pretty good game that's should be about a pick 'em. It's if one team if it's within a field goal, I could see Eastern Michigan pulling it out relatively easily at home. So I definitely like that pick as well. But those are upset picks. Let's move on to our parlays or teasers of the week. So this is at least a 3-leg parlay or teaser, and then we'll give you the plus money value at the end of it. Mike, I'll move on to you. I know you got to battle a little bit of a cold there, but let's see if you get hot with your parlay or teaser. What do you got?
I'm feeling really good about this one this week. So I went with an all favorites teaser, buying some points. Florida State at Wake Forest. I know they've been reeling a little bit, Florida State, but Wake Forest is not a good football team. So I think they'll handle business pretty easily down there in the ACC country. USC is going to bounce back against Cal. I was close to having I think it was 10.5 as the line. I was close to having that as one of my favorite pick. I decided to throw it in the teaser. I feel really, really good about that one. And then same thing with Ohio State at Wisconsin. I didn't like the half a point. Had it been -13.5 or -14, that might have been a lock for me at Wisconsin. Ohio State's defense, it is too good to keep this game within 2 scores. And really all they have to do is chuck the ball up to Kate Stover and Marvin Harrison Jr. as we saw last week. Those dudes make plays. And Wisconsin's defense is good. They're still not like your slightly older brothers, Wisconsin defense. So this Wisconsin team lost to Iowa without allowing them to run an offensive play on the Wisconsin side of the field, which I still cannot believe. That parlay together, buying some points, -15 FSU, -6 USC, and -10 Ohio State will get you +247. So almost 2.5 times your money back.
No, that's good value. Going back to the well of buying some points. I love it. But no, I fully agree with the Ohio State, the -10, and I think USC -6 is free money buying that down. Florida State -15 is definitely a lot of points, but again, yeah, I don't think Wake is a good football team. So I like that 2.5 times your money is definitely pretty good. I'll move on to mine. I'm keeping with my same trend. I'm doing my 5.95 special. So this is just 3 straight up picks against the spread parlayed together. I already talked about 2 of these games, so I'll kind of move. Actually, we already talked about all 3 of these games, but I love UCLA -17 against Colorado at home. I flirted with having this as be my lock. I think UCLA is on the up, and Colorado's kind of in the middle of a skid. So UCLA -17. Oregon -6.5 at Utah. I love Oregon pulling this out. I think it's going to be a relatively close game, back and forth a little bit, but I think Oregon proved last week that they just have like staying power. They're just a good football team, and they're just going to continue to put pressure on into the 3rd and 4th quarter. So I love them covering by a touchdown. And then my lock of the week is in here too. SMU -20.5 against Tulsa at home. I love SMU being able to run up the score against Tulsa here. So all 3 of those together. So the 5.95 special is assuming all these are -110. I think I saw one of them move up to -112, so that was like 5.89, but I'm still going to call it a 5.95 because I think the line's going to settle out, and that was the first thing I saw in that. So 5.95 special, UCLA -17, Oregon -6.5, and SMU -20.5, all favorites. Matt, what do you got? What do you think about our parlays and buying points, and what do you got for yours?
Yeah, I liked all of those picks when we gave them, so I always like that parlay. Love the teaser. I went with the teaser myself. This is my NFT, my no fun teaser. I have 4 unders teased up 6 points. So Colorado, UCLA. I think UCLA's defense is really good, and they'll be able to stop Colorado. So under 69.5. I don't think that game gets to the 70s. Clemson, NC State under 50. Clemson's defense is very good. They'll be able to stop NC State, and their offense like doesn't have an identity right now. They're not moving the ball well at all, so I don't like that to get into the 50s. Oregon, Utah under 53.5. This one is probably the one that worries me the most on the picks, but I still think it stays under 53.5. I think Utah's defense and Oregon's defense are both good enough that this game doesn't turn into a complete shootout. And then Georgia, Florida under 53.5. We talked earlier in the year about betting against Graham Mertz against good defenses. He's going to make a mistake or two, so he's going to throw a pick or two. And then Georgia without Brock Bowers, they're still going to win this game, but their offense is neutered to me a little bit. I don't think they score over 54. So that's the 4-leg teaser. That's plus 300, all unders.
I love the name No Fun teaser. The only thing I hate is that you're right against me with the Oregon Utah. I know you bought a couple points, but that's a really tight needle for us to thread with 53.5 and 48. So we'll see. But one of us has to get hot on our parlays or teasers of the week. But all right, so we'll wrap up. We'll give a couple additional picks, and then we'll send you all on your way. So I'll just give my only additional pick. Mike, I know you don't like the half point, but I love Ohio State 14.5. Just over what I would have loved them at 14 or 13.5. But I'm going to the game. I'm going to be rooting for Ohio State, so I got to support Ohio State. I do think they can run up the score a little bit. They're not. I know Wisconsin's defense is good. They're not Penn State good. So I do think they're going to be able to score a little bit better or a little bit more efficiently, I should say. And I think their defense is going to absolutely show out. I could see Wisconsin being held to 10 points or less if Ohio State really balls out. So it's more of a rooting for their defense to stifle Wisconsin and for them to just simply put up maybe 28, 35 points and just Wisconsin's not really able to do anything. But what else you got, Mike? I'll turn to you first, and then Matt, we'll close it out.
Yeah, the only concern I have about that Ohio State game is maybe the win hangover, as well as that's 11 a.m. local time kickoff, right?
No, this is a night game.
Oh, that's not the big noon kickoff?
No, they.
Oh, hot dog.
Yes, not the big new kickoff. Thank goodness, because tailgating at 6 a.m. in Madison wouldn't be too ideal. So
I just assumed that was the big noon kickoff at 11 a.m. So now I feel much better about the 14.5 now, even though they're going to be jumping around in Madison. I don't think that matters. I got Maryland at Northwestern under 48.5. This was close to being my under pick. My only concern would be that Northwestern's defense is so bad that Maryland scores 35 or so. Their rush defense is god awful. But Maryland's rush offense isn't the greatest, so I'm hopeful with that 48.5. I don't know that Northwestern's going to score more than 10 points. So I feel pretty good about under 48.5.
I love that pick. I had the exact same fear. I was nervous that Maryland would literally score 48 points. But no, I think Northwestern, not a good football team. I don't think they're putting up any points. But Matt, what do you think about those and additional picks? What else you got?
Really like the under pick. The half point scares me too much on the Ohio State, so I'll probably stay away from that one. But I obviously Ohio State should beat the doors off Wisconsin. The two I have, I didn't like a ton this week. The spreads are Vegas did well with the spreads this week. So I have two different lines in games that I already had picks on. So instead of the over in Rice Tulane, I have Rice plus 10.5 versus Tulane. I think Tulane's kind of a bit of a fraudulent 6-1. They've won games, but they haven't blown anybody out. They've kind of let teams stay around in games, and I think Rice can score enough that they'll be able to keep pace with 10.5. And then South Alabama, Louisiana over 54.5. I just think this is a game where South Alabama's might put up 40 by themselves, and then Louisiana only has to put up a touchdown or two to keep it within range. So I think that should be an easy cover there.
Yeah, no, I like those two. We already talked about Rice Tulane, and actually we talked about South Alabama, Louisiana too. But I think South Alabama's offense is awesome, so I love that over pick. And then one more pick I wanted to throw out. I know I mentioned this before, but this is actually a Thursday game, so hopefully we get the podcast out before and you can be able to bet this game. But I love Syracuse. Syracuse at Virginia Tech under, I think it's at 47 now. It was at 48, and it's been constantly moving down. I think it opened at 51. So I mean, get it while you can, but I could see this, settling down under 45, when all's said and done. But I just don't really think either of these teams are good. Syracuse has scored 21 points combined in their last 3 games. Last week they scored 3 against Florida State, and the week before they scored 7 against UNC. And Virginia Tech is just not really a good football team. They're getting beat by everyone in the ACC. So, but yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet to be under 48, and I would probably play that all the way down to 45. But all right, so that's our week 9 preview. So all of our picks, we're going to put out the graphic after we put out the podcast. So you can follow along, you can follow us, you can feed us, whatever you want to do. But this has been the week 9 Transfer Portal CFB podcast presented by No Context CFB, and we'll see you next week.